You guys remember this video from almost a decade ago? How did ISIS get so many Toyotas? Let's watch the video.
We turn now to a question being asked by American authorities after so many videos and images of ISIS. U.S. counterterrorism officials asking, why are ISIS fighters driving so many similar trucks and where are they getting them from? Look at these images. ISIS fighters riding in Toyota pickups and Toyota Land Cruisers. Authorities now asking the automaker, can they help officials figure out why ISIS has so many Toyotas? ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross looking for answers tonight.
The Toyota Hilux pickup is one tough truck. As the BBC auto show Top Gear demonstrated.
Here it is!
Seemingly indestructible, which has made the Toyota Hilux a truck of choice in war zones around the world, including by ISIS. Their propaganda videos show convoys made up mostly of Toyota Hilux pickups and Land Cruisers. And now ABC News has learned that a U.S. Treasury counterterrorism unit is asking Toyota to help them determine how so many of its trucks, both newer and older models, have ended up in the hands of ISIS.
There are too many that could be just stolen.
Former American diplomat Mark Wallace, who now runs the Counter-Extremism Project, says he suspects ISIS supporters are buying many of the trucks from Toyota dealerships and then turning them over to the terror group.
Keep that in mind. ISIS supporters. ISIS supporters. Keep that in mind.
We believe that sales are being diverted from these dealerships in order to support ISIS. I think it's a concern to the United States government and our allies.
The Iraqi ambassador to the United States says ISIS has hundreds of brand new Toyotas in its fleet.
How could these four-wheel drives, with hundreds of them, where are they coming from?
Toyota says it does not know how ISIS is getting its vehicles and that it is impossible to control indirect or black market sales. But no one from Toyota would agree to appear in our report. And when we went to last month's big Toyota dealer meeting in Las Vegas, hotel security officials flashed lights into our camera lens and ordered us to stop taping or else.
Sir, if you could just walk right out this way.
And Brian with us now. We just want to make this clear. Toyota says it doesn't know how ISIS is getting its hands on these trucks.
That's right, David. In a statement to ABC News, Toyota says it is not aware of any of its dealerships violating the company policy not to sell to terrorist groups. All of this, David, is part of a broad U.S. effort by the Treasury Department to keep ISIS from using its huge supply of cash to equip and resupply its terrorist army.
All right, Brian Ross.
Okay, so just a couple of days ago, CNN did an interview, a very softball fluff interview with the new leader of Syria, who, they took over Syria. This guy is an ISIS head chopper. This is al-Julani. Okay, and if you need proof that this guy that CNN did an interview with he was in ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It says so right here. He was born in Saudi Arabia to a Syrian family from the Golan Heights. He joined Al-Qaeda in Iraq. That's ISIS. And his release, blah, 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 created the Al-Nusra Front. That's Al-Qaeda. With the support of Al-Qaeda. Watch this.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the Al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded Al-Qaeda-aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No. I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60
I've not
seconds ago
contradicted,
about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat Al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account, because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the Al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
Well, you heard it directly from this guy. So he's the former director of Israel's Mossad. And he's admitting that Israel treats Al-Qaeda terrorists, these Al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria. Remember, Al-Julani, this guy, the guy who did a fluff interview with CNN, friggin' CNN. This is an ISIS head chopper. Let's watch this.
Have already a historical incident which proves that the United States or the deep state, call it whatever you want, they armed this type of terrorists in the past. Yeah. The second, this is the evidence. The proof, I have two proofs for this. The first one is Jake Sullivan, who is now the national security advisor for the Biden administration. In 2012, he was the advisor for Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. And he sent an email to Hillary Clinton saying, I'm quoting him now, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And this is the email when Hillary Clinton's emails were hacked. We learned about this from her emails.
Yes.
We have a third statement coming from James Jeffrey, who was twice U.S. Special Envoy to Syria under Trump and under Obama. And he said to the American PBS in 2021, I believe, that Jolani's army, which is the leader of this al-Nusra Front, the offshoot of Al-Qaeda in Syria.
Now remember, Al-Julani is this guy. The guy that CNN is interviewing, is doing a fluff interview and trying to turn him into like a freedom fighter rebel guy. That's who he's talking about.
Was, quote, an asset of the US strategy in Syria. So this guy is now leading the insurgency against Assad now. He conquered Aleppo, he conquered Hama, and he has already Idlib, and he's pushing to Homs. And in the mainstream press, Al-Jolani is now called diversity friendly. Mm-hmm. He's called a rebel, and he's called like they say that he has matured and he's going to like treat the Christians well and the minorities well, and he's no longer a radical person, this and that. So if we wait a few more weeks, I'm 100% sure that they will say that Jolani is an LGBTQ ally. You know, like we're going there because CNN met with Jolani yesterday, and if CNN wants to meet Jolani, I'm sure that they know the handler of Jolani, so they made the call to go and meet with Jolani, well, right? I mean, look,
So yeah, he's talking about this fluff interview that CNN did with an ISIS terrorist, ISIS and Al-Qaeda both. Let's watch this and learn more.
And a problem, and obviously you're old enough to remember this too, but now all of a sudden the U.S. government seems to have no problem working with Al-Qaeda when it comes to Syria. And I want to get your take about that. How is it that now all of a sudden the U.S. government seems to be fine with Al-Qaeda, and they want us to just forget about all the things that they said about them and some of the video footage that we've seen about Al-Qaeda and how they treated prisoners and prisoners of war? What do you think is happening here?
Well, first of all, this isn't something that just happened overnight. We know, for instance, that Jake Sullivan, the current national security advisor back during the Obama administration, he articulated that that Al-Qaeda is useful to the United States because they can be used to bring down the regime of Bashar al-Assad. So there was apparently good Al-Qaeda, and then there was the bad Al-Qaeda. And the good Al-Qaeda are people that are doing things that are to the benefit of the United States. For instance, there's other good Al-Qaeda in Yemen. As long as they're fighting the Houthi, they're good Al-Qaeda. But when they turn their guns against us or our allies, then they're bad Al-Qaeda. And sometimes it's the same. This character, Jolani, who's the head of HTS, which is a rebranding of al-Nusra, which is a rebranding of Al-Qaeda.
Okay, remember, he's talking about this guy, the head chopper, the ISIS guy. And like Scott Ritter said, these HTS rebels is just a rebranding of al-Nusra, which in turn is just a rebranding of Al-Qaeda.
He's a Saudi who started off his Al-Qaeda existence going to Iraq to kill American soldiers. Now, again, we can talk about, America shouldn't have invaded Iraq. I agree. We shouldn't have occupied Iraq 100%. 100%. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the United States saying that Al-Qaeda is bad. That's the policy of the United States. We can debate a whole bunch of things if you want to. 9/11, blowback. This was, something that was bound to happen because of our policies in the Middle East. But that's not the question. The question is, what is the policy of the United States? And the United States policy has been, even prior to 9/11, that Al-Qaeda is the bad guys, that they're terrorists. And then after 9/11, they're terrorists who represent a existential threat to the United States. They attacked us. So we're going to go over there to fight them so that never happens again over here. That's all. Remember, they're bad. We're going to go. We not only did we manufacture an excuse to invade Iraq, saying that Saddam was in league with Al-Qaeda. He wasn't, never was. Actually, Saddam was a perfect ally for us to fight Al-Qaeda. Secular man, didn't believe in religious extremism. But no, we had to overthrow Saddam. But in Afghanistan, we took down the Taliban because we said they facilitated the whole Al-Qaeda thing. Although the Taliban told us, hey, if they're our guests, and under the Pashtun policy of being guests, so they're not allowed to do criminal acts like attack other people while they're our guests. If you can give us, and Mutawaka, who was their foreign minister at the time, told the United States, just provide the evidence that Al-Qaeda did this to you. Show us that they did this to you, and we'll take care of it, because they're our guests, and our guests aren't allowed to do this. But we didn't want to do it. We wanted to go in, occupy a country, kill people, do that whole thing. The point is, Al-Qaeda, our hatred of Al-Qaeda got us involved in 2 wars. Neither one we won. The Taliban's back today. Al-Qaeda was never fundamentally defeated in Afghanistan. And 2, in Iraq, Al-Qaeda in Iraq arose and was killing Americans, a lot of Americans. Jolani was one of the guys doing that. He was so good at it that he was sent to Syria to create, together with a guy named al-Baghdadi, to create something called ISIS. And they created ISIS, and then they start launching these attacks through Syria into Iraq, taking Mosul and moving down to Tikrit. And then we said, this is a threat. So we then, Major League intervened, and to push them out of Iraq, go into Syria, launch a major campaign. But then all of a sudden something happened. ISIS became a problem for Bashar al-Assad. And so we suddenly stopped saying, oh, we gotta kill ISIS. And we started saying, as long as they rebrand themselves, as long as they rename themselves. So ISIS, Al-Qaeda became al-Nusra, became other things. These Wahhabist, Salafist, anti-Assad elements. And we supported them. We funded them. We armed them. We trained them. We served as their diplomatic corps. On occasion, we served as their air force because their job was to take down Bashar. These are the same people that were killing American soldiers in Iraq. I just want you to understand it. The guy that's sitting there in Damascus today killed American soldiers. Now, you can say, well, America shouldn't have been there. I agree. Killed Americans, guys. You know what we do to people who kill Americans? We never forgive. I'm not saying this is right. I'm just telling you what we do. I'm not justifying this policy. I'm telling you what we do. Qasem Soleimani, you remember the reason why we killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, is because he helped lead a revolt in the south with the Shia that killed hundreds of Americans. And we said that's unforgivable. So we will do everything we can to track him down and kill him. And we did. Jolani killed hundreds of Americans. And yet here he is sitting in Damascus, and we love him because he got rid of Bashar al-Assad. This is
You heard a lot about Jake Sullivan, this guy. Let's listen. Let's listen.
Presence both in Iraq and in Syria. That presence in Syria is there to work hand in hand with local partners to continue to suppress the threat that ISIS has posed going back many years now. And we've had significant progress in that fight just even in the last few months. Major players taken off the battlefield, large-scale degradation of those ISIS forces. But of course, an event like this happens, and ISIS immediately looks to take advantage. And we have seen reports of ISIS trying out in the Syrian Badia, the desert, to try to reconstitute to a certain extent. So we will continue to take action against that. And we will continue to make sure that force protection, the protection of our service members who are serving at a range of bases in eastern Syria.
Okay, so like he keeps on talking about how ISIS bad, ISIS bad. These are the guys who the United States was helping, and these are the guys. These are the Syrian rebels, the HTS. This is the same guy that CNN interviewed. This is who this fool is trying to say are bad guys when when it's convenient for them to be bad guys. But no, the United States was helping them. Like, CNN interviewed this ISIS guy.
Syria is the paramount concern from the president on down. The threat to those service members is not just from ISIS or from this violence. It is also from Iranian-backed Shia militia groups who themselves could try to take advantage of this. And so we are also doing what we believe we need to do to prepare for, deter, and protect against any potential attacks from that group of actors, which of course we have seen over the course of the past few years, and which we under the Biden administration have responded to at several points with direct strikes against those forces, both in Syria and in Iraq.
He makes the case that those troops there actually have combat power and that they can be used to defend American interests if they needed to be. But we're talking about roughly 2,500 in Iraq and 900 in all that vast expanse of Syria that you talked about a minute ago, and they're not doing anything there. So why do we want to keep those troops in there, and what do you think Trump will do about it?
Well, he was, let us say, just to be polite, rather disingenuous about a number of things. First of all, we, that is the CIA, and I think MI6 from Britain have had a hand in rebranding ISIS and all of these radical Islamists and making them into something else, at least on the surface, so that they could be utilized to attack the enemies that we have chosen. And those enemies are Iran and its Shiite supporters. So insofar as we've had a hand in that, I think it's a little ridiculous for him to say, well, we're keeping an eye on this because ISIS will take advantage of it. ISIS is there. ISIS is us. Okay? And ISIS does have
ISIS is this guy that CNN is interviewing. He chopped off people's heads.
Have their eyes on Tikrit, on Mosul, on Kirkuk in northern Iraq, which of course are cities of great interest to the Turks, who view those cities as Turkish anyway. So if anything, what we've done now is we put the Kurds in this unenviable position of becoming a target for the Turkish military in the near future. The Turks now have the opportunity to flank and surround the Kurds down in Syria and drive headlong into them and throw them out of Syria entirely. And I think these are things that are being considered, as I said, on Turkish television. You see all these depictions of Greater Turkey or, the neo-Ottoman Turkish sphere of influence. All of it's readily available.
So you get the point. So how did ISIS get so many Toyotas? Who's been helping them out all along? How did ISIS get all those Toyotas, all those trucks? I think the answer is obvious. You guys tell me.